Delighted to say Lord Charlie Falconer joins us now. Labour peer, former Justice Secretary. Very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Julia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me to the Home of Common Sense.
We haven't got time for too many niceties because we're running a little bit late, so let's get straight to it.
Is nastiness about to come then, Julia?
Never with you, Charlie, never. How bad is the economy and what sort of ruthless spending cuts do we need?
Well, I think that the issue about the economy is the extent to which gilt yields will go up. I think it's really important that the government stick by its position, and its position is, and it's the right position, sort out the public finances and do everything you can in structural changes like planning reform in order to get growth. And that's the right course. And we've got to be as strong as we possibly can and consistent.
But she's talking about spending cuts.
Can I just do? I think if the position is that in order to stay within our fiscal rules, some spending cuts are required more than had previously been thought, then that's the way it's going to have to be.
But hold on a minute. When David Cameron and George Osborne instigated a load of spending cuts when the economy was in the doldrums when they took over in 2010, Labour said, no, you can't cut your way out of what these problems. You have to spend your way. But now she's saying, no, it's all about cuts, apparently. We have got
to provide a consistent economic policy, and we were absolutely clear at the time we took over that we'd stick with the fiscal rules. She can't break the fiscal rules, and she's making that clear. I don't think there is a legitimate basis for criticism along the lines that you're suggesting, Julia.
But it's austerity. No, she's going to follow austerity, even though she criticised the Tories for doing the same thing when they said we're just trying to balance the books. She wants to balance the books. I support balancing the books, but she and Labour and you criticised the Tory party for doing that when they did it, but it's OK when you do it.
I'm not quite sure what you're suggesting. Are you suggesting that she breaks her fiscal rules?
No, I'm asking why it's OK when Labour does it, but it's not OK when the Tories do it.
I don't think that's a fair analysis of what went before.
Is it completely different?
I think most people would think that the austerity imposed by Osborne and Cameron at the particular time was wrong because it led to a much more stagnating economy. The consequence of that has been that we've now got to take other measures. So I don't think it's a useful or accurate dealing with the economy.
A lot of economists and business leaders might beg to differ. We've got a massive lack of business confidence. We've got big concerns about inflation going up, about job losses, about wages not being able to keep track because there's extra national insurance costs imposed by Rachel Reeves and her head of the budget, or in the budget. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, it's all down to growth and confidence and productivity. There's not any evidence that anything that the Chancellor has announced so far is leading to those things.
You are right, Julia, where you say that business is saying the employer's national insurance increase, the increase the living wage, is leading to them being under greater pressure. The government had a difficult choice to make to start with, which is get the public finances right, which they are doing. The way that we're going to get growth is not through fiscal measures. The way we're going to get growth is through structural changes, like the planning changes, like building more houses, like retrofitting a huge number of buildings for the green future.
It's the number one priority for the population, Charlie.
But Julia, you are not focusing on the problem that the economy faces, which is years of lack of investment and years of a reduction in productivity. What you are focusing on is the fact that the gilt markets, quite understandably, are focusing very heavily on what's going to happen to the world economy in the light of what might be inflationary pressures from Trump.
Charlie, a lot of this is happening in other countries, but not to the same extent. We are being hit harder because there's a less confidence. You talked about productivity, falling productivity. That's only in the public sector. Private sector productivity has gone up. Public sector productivity has flatlined.
And that includes, sorry, I apologise for interrupting, Julia. Go on with your point.
Public sector productivity that has flatlined, and your government has just given a massive big pay rise to a bunch, well, certainly a big pay rise to a bunch of public sector workers without requiring any change to productivity levels.
You are completely wrong when you say that the only reduction in productivity is in the public sector. Indeed, one of the problems about the country is if you compare some private sector productivity with other countries, we're not as good. In relation to the pay rises, they will have the effect in very many cases of ensuring that productivity does go up in the public sector. But there's a huge way to go in relation to that.
I mean, I'm not sure paying train drivers more is going to make them any more productive. We've just seen, I mean, certainly on the Avanti West Coast line, they're working few days because they've now got enough money. They don't need to work at weekends at all. How are we going to improve growth in this country? I mean, we laugh, but that's the true thing. How are we going to improve growth in this country and tackle these issues if we've got some of the highest energy costs in the world? We are our energy costs for business are 5 times that of those in businesses in America. For homes, 3 times as much. How on earth are we going to, say, boost our economy with AI, which, by the way, uses huge amounts of electricity, when our electricity and other energy costs are so sky high because of a reliance and a push for even further reliance on net zero renewable technology?
Well, there's a whole range of things that need to be done. I think we need to, for example, expand nuclear. I think, for example, we need to make sure that renewables over time, and they will over time, cheapen the cost of energy. They need to be continuing to be invested in. I agree that the transition needs to focus as much as possible on both fairness and ensuring the costs are kept down. But it's a long-term process.
No, it's not. You've got 2030. No, Charlie, 2030 is 5 years away.
Yeah, that's right.
That's not long term.
What are you saying, Julia? We should stop trying to improve. We should stop
I'm saying you should drop all net zero targets.
I don't know what you are suggesting.
No,
Julia.
I'm telling you what I'm suggesting. Drop all net zero targets, certainly anything involving 2030.
Oh, right. And so,
including 2050. I drop all of it.
Okay. I disagree with that approach, Julia. I think that is completely mad. I think you are the shortest termist person, and the idea that you are operating from a home of common sense seems to be for the birds.
No, I'm not short term. I believe long term. Short term is thinking that you can actually have net zero fossil fuel free electricity in this country. Oh, sorry, was it down to 95% now in the latest pledge by 2030? When anyone who knows anything about the energy needs of this country knows that we're going to be using gas and nuclear and oil for many, many, many decades to come. I'm long term. I criticise the Tories just as much for this policy as well.
I understand your solution to be ditch all your net zero targets. Well, I'm against that.
The solution is to have cheap, available, reliable, affordable energy. That's how you boost the economy. There has never been an economy in the world that has boosted its growth with high energy costs. We have some of the highest energy costs in the world. So how do you think that's going to deliver growth? Given that, that's because of net zero.
I think we need to balance the transition with sticking to our net zero targets and introducing things like nuclear. I think your statement, no economy has ever gone into growth with high energy costs. I don't quite know what that means, because I don't know what you thought happened in the 1980s and what the cost of energy then was.
Not as much as it is now, that's for sure. Fine, we've only got a minute left. I want to ask you, Tulip Siddiq, does she still have a job at the end of this month, or indeed at the end of this week, and should she?
It's for Sir Laurie Magnus to produce his report, and the right process is being followed.
What do you think? You're a former Justice Secretary. Do you think it's a good idea to have an anti-corruption minister in the Treasury who's being accused of corruption?
I'm not going to second-guess what Laurie Magnus says.
You don't have any views? She was owning a property that was gifted to her by a man being investigated for corruption, who's close to her aunt, who's also being investigated for corruption as a former Bangladeshi PM. And you have no view on that? I have a view that Sir Laurie Magnus is likely to know a lot more about it than I do. But on what you know about it? No, I'm not going to give a half-baked answer, Julia. Sorry. The home of common sense would not expect it, Julia. Oh, we would. Lord Charlie Falconer, we'll have to leave it there. As you can hear, time is against us. Great to have you join us.